You're listening to Outrageous Love, the podcast. If you work in education and would like to share your journey to responsiveness, consider being a guest on our show. Send us an email at info@culturallyresponsive.org to get connected.
And what I want to just put out there is this notion of the rabbit hole, okay? And I do it a lot. And the rabbit hole is typically surrounding, for me, something that starts off racial. And then I do my don't let your first thought be your last thought, right? And then I begin to explore it from a cultural standpoint, whatever that cultural standpoint may be, right? Meaning if it's ethnic, if it's national, if it's religions or whatever, right? And I begin to explore more. I read more, I investigate, I look up. And so I define that as the sort of diversity rabbit hole, right? And it's something I believe we all do because part of it is kind of like human nature. But the question is, where do you go with it, right?
From the Center for Culturally Responsive Teaching and Learning, it's the Outrageous Love Podcast with your fabulous host, Dr. Shiraki Hollie.
Happy summer. Welcome to the Summer Vibe Nation. Thank you for uploading, downloading, checking us out. We really appreciate it. I'm going to pivot to something that I was going to do for the month of July, which is our kind of fun episode, traditionally speaking. But we're going to make it a two-parter, and this is called Go Down the Rabbit Hole with Dr. Hollie. That's the theme of it. And I want to take you inside my brain when I go down the diversity rabbit hole, and it's going to be in two parts. The first part is World Cup themed, yes, since we are in the middle of the World Cup and, you know, it's taking place in North America, so it's very exciting. We have games here in Los Angeles at what we would normally call SoFi Stadium, but it's called Los Angeles Stadium. And just a lot of energy and activity around the stadium and the Inglewood area with the crowds from all over the world. Really, just really exciting. And then of course we have it going on in Canada and in Mexico. So I'll be honest, I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I do get caught up with the Olympics, with the World Cup, and with the Los Angeles Football Club when they're like in the playoffs or there's championships. So I guess, you can call me like bandwagon soccer fan, when there's something big going on. But I don't pay attention on the daily or, like that. I do, kind of follow the huge stars in terms of, the ones that are breaking the records or, like obviously Messi and Ronaldo and folks like that, Mbappe, right? So I guess you can call me sort of like a superficial fan, if you will. But I do get caught up for the World Cup. So I wanted to share with you how I went down a rabbit hole with this World Cup 2026. And it's something that I think we all do. And I'm hoping you will share along with me as I just share my thoughts. This is part one of going down the rabbit hole with Dr. Hollie. This one, I am sharing you real thoughts, but I didn't plan to share it, in this format. Just kind of keep it to myself or with family. So why not, right? First, as you always know, we got to affirm ourselves. So let's tell our faces that we're happy. There we go. You get to see the smile. Things are really slow right now because the summer is upon us and a lot of schools are taking breaks and such. So it's everybody's in vacation mode. It's hard to reach people, but we're keeping that smile on our face, trying to keep joy in our hearts and minds, and just focus on the importance of the work. So that's why I smile, because I know it will all work out. Everything will be taken care of. Everybody will come back. They'll be rested. They'll be rejuvenated. They'll be refreshed, and then we can begin to do the work that our students so sorely need. So just do what I did. Tell your faces that you're happy. Think about all the stuff that's going on, but do it knowing that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. All right. All right. Second one, I'm going to steal from Cat Williams, which, he does a really good job of talking about how you have to love yourself and self love. Our second affirmation is about loving ourselves, showing self love. And Cat Williams says sometimes you should just look in the mirror and lie to yourself. He says jokingly, right? And the joke is he looks in the mirror and says, wow, I would look really good 6'2", or like a taller person, which is really funny. So I want you to do that. I just want you to, whatever you're wanting, hoping for, we all have that thing we're looking for. Like, so I'm lying to myself and giving myself self-love that I've lost the 20 pounds that I've been trying to lose for like 10 years or whatever. I'm almost there though, believe it or not, but not all the way there. So I'm looking in the mirror and just saying, yeah, I'm gonna look good, 20 pounds less. Okay, all right. And I want you to do the same. Whatever it is, I want you to just you're actually calling something out for yourself though. No, you can do it, but nobody else can do it. All right. So look in the mirror and just lie to yourself, just for fun. Okay. And then our third affirmation is that we show love to others. And so we want you to reach out to someone and talk about, give them some love in terms of the importance of rest, rejuvenation. Maybe it's somebody who is constantly on the go, working. And you want to just encourage them to take a break, smell the flowers, enjoy whatever. It's interesting to me because everybody can't go on vacation or everybody can't do all these big things. And I think that we need to show comfort in the simple things and just, the practice of, sometimes a vacation may not mean going off somewhere. It just may mean a break from something. So maybe you can reach out to someone and show them encouragement because they're not like doing a big thing. They're not traveling anywhere. They're not going anywhere. And you can say, hey, it's all good. It's all good. Because you can vacation in your backyard. You can vacation in your front yard. There or in your local thing, right? And just show them some love. Show them some encouragement, whatever. We have this experience, right? When we in the classroom when I hated this, and I know you did too. When we come back from the summer and that deadly question, which I tell new teachers, please don't ask, like, how did you spend your summer? And especially if you go around, you start going around the room and you have one kid who's like, oh, I went to Europe. And then I always had that kid who said, oh, I didn't do anything. And that's the person I'm trying to show love to. Okay. Because sometimes nothing is something, and we got to give credit to that. And I've experienced this in a privileged situation, and it's always a hierarchy, right? So I've been in a situation where kids are middle class, even upper class, and most of the room, the kids are going somewhere, they're doing something, but it's like one kid, went to wherever for 3 weeks and stayed in a castle. Had a kid one time showed a Instagram in Dubai on on a jet ski, right? And so it doesn't, it's always going to be like a more, right? Just as, because of how our society works. And so that's why we got to make sure we're celebrating everyone. Okay. All right. So that's how, for those of you new to the pod, that's what we do. We affirm ourselves every time by reminding ourselves that the sun is always shining, smiling, putting a smile on our face, giving ourselves some love and giving others love. Okay. Now, I'm going to segue to Dr. Hollie's two cents. Don't get it twisted. What I want to just put out there is this notion of the rabbit hole. Okay. And I do it a lot. And the rabbit hole is typically surrounding, for me, something that starts off racial. And then I do my don't let your first thought be your last thought, right? And then I begin to explore it from a cultural standpoint, whatever that cultural standpoint may be, right? Meaning if it's ethnic, if it's national, if it's religions or whatever, right? And I begin to explore more. I read more, I investigate, I look up. And so um, this takes time though. That's why I call it a rabbit hole, because it can consume you from a thought process, but also from a action process if you decide to find out more by, doing a quick Google search or, reading something or whatever, right? And so I define that as the sort of diversity rabbit hole, right? And it's something I believe we all do because part of it is kind of like human nature. But the question is, where do you go with it, right? And those of you who say, "Oh, I don't see Ray," blah blah blah, that's crap. We know that. But we're gonna talk about how we can sort of frame it for ourselves so that we don't have to it doesn't have to come across as a bad thing, okay? So that's number one. So the rabbit hole is when you start off with something racial, quote unquote, but you catch yourself. In our work, it's called "It May Be My First Thought, It Will Not Be My Last Thought." And then you're willing to do a little more investigation, research, knowledge building. That's what I call the rabbit hole. Okay? All right? Now, the second part of this is just to build a little background. We're in our work of culture and linguistic responsiveness. We're trying not to center race, but that doesn't mean that we don't talk about race. Okay, this is important, but it's not the center for us. The center for us is culture. And so, what I'm really trying to do is, we always talk about race as a social construct, but it dominates, right? What I would like to do is get another term for race to acknowledge our diversity, if you will, but not through a quote unquote racial lens. Okay. So during my rabbit hole, I'm using the term melanated. Okay. I think that's a good term, melanated, as we refer to, quote unquote people of color. I'm going to use the term diaspora because sometimes if you look at race, one definition is race is how people have walked around the world since the beginning of humankind, right? So race tells that story. Race tells us where how people walked around the world, and if we acknowledge and willing to acknowledge that humankind started in Africa, okay? So we all originate from Africa, and then we began to spread out, right? Then there is a diasporic feature, meaning that wherever you see sort of today, historically would be wherever you see sort of what we would call like an African diaspora or a Latin diaspora, right? So when we say these are where people from their original place are now spread across the world in a diaspora type of way. So I'm saying we could say diaspora, we could say melanated. One way that we tried to get around the term race was people of color, which is really just colored people, right? Everybody knows that. So that doesn't make too much sense. But for this current rabbit hole, I came up with the term. I use the term melanated and diaspora, right? Now, ultimately, if those of you who are familiar with our work, we want to use the color black, white for the ethnic identity, right? To focus on culture. So for us, black culture represents the ethnic identity, right? Meaning the cross section is national identity, right? So I would say diasporic or melanated, I am African, okay? My national identity is United States, and I'm rooting for Brazil. There's a long story there, but I'm on the bandwagon with the U.S. team. Okay, don't get it twisted. All right, but if you look at my ESPN World Cup bracket, I have I'm back and forth with Spain and Brazil. Okay, I just want to let you know that, but I don't have any Spain gear. Okay, all right. So, U.S. and then my ethnic identity, my home culture, what I was raised on in terms of my cultural behaviors, the iceberg concept of culture is based on I'm putting black under that. Okay. All right. So I hope you're staying with us. I try to encourage people not to use color for race. Right. This is one of my goals in life. Right. So that when you hear me say black, I'm referring to culture. Right. We had you'll see recording this weekend. We had the Black Entertainment Awards, right? And they kept using the word culture all throughout, right? This is for the culture. This is representing the culture. And I think that that's how we should be framing it. But in our generic society, as you well know, I don't have to repeat that, we have used it color for race. I'm trying to disrupt that, okay? All right. So that was just a little background. Those of you who roll with us, you know this already. Sorry for the review. Now, let's get to the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole started for me, and it also started for other people too. It wasn't just me, right? Okay. But I'm giving you literally the moment that it started. And the moment that it started was when I was watching Mexico play their first game, and they had a melanated player on the team. And I was like, whoa, because my first thought dynamic was I expected the Mexican team to be all quote unquote Mexican, whatever that means. Okay. Even if you want to count it like from a mestizo standpoint, right? I was not expecting an African, quote unquote, diasporically speaking. Okay. And so then I began to wonder, like, given all the teams, what was my expectation in terms of a first thought? And what teams did I expect not to have melanated players or diasporic players versus what teams I thought? This was tapping into my own bias immediately. Okay? Are you with me? Give me thumbs up. You with me? Now, I know other people are doing the same thing because I heard public commentary about, he's actually Afro-Colombian, right? Player on the Mexican team. Okay? Now, I could have left it just right there. I could have, that was my first thought, and I could have moved on, enjoyed the game, but I couldn't let it go. So this is what I mean. You got to go to the second phase, do some research, read something, get some info so that you don't have a first thought, last thought dynamic. My first thought was Mexico should not have diasporic players on it. They should be, quote unquote, all Mexican. I was dead wrong, right? So this is going down the rabbit hole. The player on the Mexican team is Julian Quiñones. And I know I'm butchering that, but that's the best I got with my 4 years of Spanish and 1 semester in college, okay? Right? And what I found out about Julian is he is a Colombian-born professional footballer, okay? Who is a naturalized Mexican citizen. Booyah. All right? Okay? And so the Colombian part didn't throw me because I know there are a lot of sort of Afro-Colombians, Afro-Peruvians, so on and so forth in terms of, when we look at it from a South America standpoint or even Central American, right? But it made sense to me. It made sense to me once I realized that he was a naturalized Mexican citizen. Okay? All right? So, booyah. I clarified. But the rabbit hole continued. So, I did a search via ChatGPT, which I asked which of the World Cup teams do not have, quote unquote, racial diversity, or all players of the same race. And I want to read for you the answer from ChatGPT. There are no FIFA World Cup teams that are genuinely all one race in a biological sense. Okay, this is important if we understand that race is bullshit, basically. Okay, and it says race is a social construct rather than a clear biological category, and every national team consists of individuals with unique ancestries, according to ChatGPT. So let's clear that up. What ChatGPT is saying is we're not examining this based on racial quote unquote, because essentially saying we're not buying into the bullshit. Okay, racial is a social construct. And I applaud that approach to some extent, because I wish that's how we can all start our conversations when we're talking about race. Like, basically, this is bullshit, right? However, it cleans it up by doing this. It says, if you're asking about visible ethnic diversity, some national teams appear more ethnically homogeneous than others because of the demographics of their countries. Now, here, I like the term visible diversity, but for me, I would take the word ethnic out, because again, ethnic refers to behavior, right? In terms of cultural behaviors, right? On the surface, I don't know the behavior of Julian on the Mexican team. I don't know his behavior. I don't know anything about him culturally, right? But as I continue to do the research on ChatGPT, I do like the term of visible diversity. So I'm going to add it to the list. Diasporic, melanated, visible diversity. Okay? And that's going to drive me in terms of me going down this rabbit hole going forward, because it's going to come up again. All right? Now, finally, ChatGPT answers the question, okay? And I know you were wondering this like I was wondering, right? And when it comes to the least visible diverse teams, the least melanated teams, quote unquote, right? The least diasporic teams, the top teams are Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Tunisia, Egypt, Norway, and Croatia. Okay? So those are the least visible diverse teams in the World Cup, according to ChatGPT. Now, when it comes to the most notably diverse, then the top teams are France, England, Belgium, Netherlands, and the United States. Now, proof that you cannot solely trust ChatGPT, because what I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed the same thing, many of the particularly West African teams were not visibly diverse. Yet, ChatGPT does not mention them at all. Okay? So, when you looked at Ghana, when you looked at Senegal, I would even say South Africa, even though we're moving out of west to south, right? We even got Cape Verde now in there. Go Cape Verde, right? And I'm wondering, oh, why didn't ChatGPT mention those teams as the least visibly diverse, right? And is our measure only the context of who has diasporic players on the team? Is that what's creating the diversity, right? Or, so to me, ChatGPT is contradicting itself, because it opens up by saying race is socially constructed, but yet it uses a measure of what qualifies as least diverse as who has melanin or not, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Are you still with me? Thumbs up. Okay. So I decided to dig a little deeper, right? And simply ask the question, who has the highest visible diversity, right? And who has the least? And once again, no West African teams are mentioned. And I want to find out why, ChatGPT, because they definitely would qualify as low visible diversity. But why are they being left out? Nowhere in the search are the African teams mentioned. West African, okay? All right. But just in case you keep a score, the highest visibly diverse teams, again, France, England, Canada, and the United States, right? Next highest, Belgium, Netherlands, Portugal, and Switzerland. And the code term here is they all have melanated players. Okay? That's the code term here, which by default brings in back race, which we have established is bullshit. Okay? Moderate, these are ones in the middle. Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Colombia. Low, this means no visible diversity. Croatia, Czechia, and Norway, right? And who are the lowest? Japan, South Korea, and Saudi Arabia. They are the lowest. Okay? Now, the question becomes, and I couldn't continue down the rabbit hole, but maybe I should after having this conversation with you. Why aren't the African teams mentioned? Why aren't they in the chat? Right? Okay? All right? Now, one of the teams with the lowest diversity was Japan. But ironically, or maybe not so ironically, it was one of the teams that I had a first thought, last thought dynamic. So after Mexico, I began just by looking at the games, right? I didn't do searches on all the teams and all of that, but I was just going on just watching the games. And I was watching Japan play. And to my surprise, because again, they have the lowest visible diversity. And to my surprise, their goalie was melanated. Their goalie was diasporic. Their goalie was visibly diverse from their players, right? From the other players. And so I was like, once again, I had a first thought. What the heck? How did they get a brother, right? How the hell did Japan get a brother? It was right. Now I know we have like no Naomi Osaka, right? I get it. You know, you got the biracial thing going on, right? But I was not expecting that. So it caused me to go further down the rabbit hole, right? And I found out that the melanated goalie on the Japanese team, his name is Zion Suzuki. Okay? Zion Suzuki, all right? He's real, right? However, he was born in New Jersey. Can you believe that? Born in New Jersey, right? But here's the thing. He has a Ghanaian father and a Japanese mother. Okay? And when he was a child, very young, his family moved to Japan, right? And that's where he basically grew up, went to school, and obviously got into the whole soccer thing. Okay? So the first player was naturalized. I'm assuming he is based on birth of his mom, the connection to his mom, right? And this is what I mean by the term diasporic might naturally fit. Great goalie, by the way. Does an outstanding job. They're about to play Brazil in the knockout round. What? We'll see what happens. I'm rooting for the brother. You know what I mean? But I'm also rooting for Brazil, so I don't know what's gonna happen there. All right. Okay. All right. So the rabbit hole continued for me when I watched Sweden play. So once again, my bias, okay? Now I'm exempling myself because I want you to admit yours, right? So my bias with the Swedish team was they would have no melanated players. They would have like I don't know the history of Sweden, okay? Call me ignorant, but I just like if I were to go to Sweden, I wouldn't expect to see a lot of diasporic folks or visible diversity. I'm admitting I could be deadly wrong. I mean, I don't know why I would end up in Sweden, but I could be wrong, okay? But once again, I'm sitting there watching the game, and they have a melanated player. In fact, how I noticed him was he scored a goal, and I was like, "What the hell? How the heck does Sweden get right?" Okay, so I had to go down the rabbit hole, and I hope you with me now. All right, okay. This gentleman is named, and I may mispronounce his last name, Anthony Elanga. Anthony Elanga. He plays for the Swedish team, has been playing for the Swedish team, right? Ever since his club years, right? He was now this is interesting. He was born in Sweden. Okay? That's different than the other two, right? Born in Sweden, and his father is from Cameroon. Okay? All right? Father from Cameroon, right? In fact, his father played football. Um, and Anthony is fluent in English and French. Okay? So, little different. This is actually a born citizen there. And there you go. All right? I was not expecting that. Okay? All right? Now, the one that tops it off for me as I continue down this rabbit hole, right? And I want you to be able to admit some of your rabbit holes because we all do it, was the gentleman from our own U.S. team, right? And that is Balogun, right? He's the one who scored the first two goals in the first game, and I would say kind of put his name, his name and face on the map. And now, of course, you see him in all the commercials. Now, he is Nigerian, United States citizen, but he is Nigerian, right? And I pulled this from the LA Times, and I just want to read how he is a United States citizen, okay? If a pregnant Nigerian woman had been allowed to board a plane 25 years ago, the U.S. team's path through this summer's World Cup may have unfolded much differently. Instead, a gate agent turned her away, insisting it wasn't safe for her to fly from New York to London. So, Florence Balogun returned to Brooklyn, where she had been visiting relatives and waited for her second son to be born. And when Florian arrived a few weeks later, entering the world just hours before Independence Day, he did so as an American citizen. Okay? And that's how we get our player Balogun, right? He actually would qualify as birthright citizenship, which the United States may take away from with the Supreme Court decision upcoming, right? And why do I say that? Because his family went back to London, right, where he was raised. So he was born in Brooklyn, raised in London, made a decision because he wasn't getting love from the England team, made a decision to play with the U.S. team a few years ago, and therefore we have him. And if you really want to drill down, because I said again, it's about ethnic culture. So his visibly diverse, quote unquote, right? And that's, once again, we're playing with that. We're toying with that term. He is a United States / British citizen. He can go either way, dual citizenship. But I would say ethnically, he seems to, if you hear him in an interview, he has a strong British accent, right? He seems to lean more on the British side. I don't know him. Once again, that's the beauty of ethnic identity, is you have to get to know you have to get to know the person, right? But he sounds British, right? So even that presents a sort of dichotomy or paradox, or whatever term you want to use. Is we have this quote unquote American player who is only American, quote unquote, from birthright citizenship because he was raised in another country, right? Um, so, and he has now become the first American player with multiple goals in a World Cup game in 96 years, while introducing himself to a country that may have known his name, but not his talent, right? So that's what I'm saying. This is introducing him to the world, but it's also introducing his background, right? So once again, his birth is in Brooklyn made him eligible to play in U.S. Long-term residency in London made him eligible to play for England. And this is very interesting. This is what I mean by going down a rabbit hole. His parents are Nigerian, which means he could play for the Nigerian team. Wow. What a triple threat. But fortunately for us, he has chosen the United States team. That's my rabbit hole, folks. And it continues because once you get into it, you understand that essentially what separates the United States is we are a nation of immigrants, right? And so it doesn't surprise me when I look at the American team and I see diasporic, I see a lot of melanated folks because, and if you read, I'm not going to go into it now because some of you are probably like, okay, get to the point. If you read some of the background of the players on the United States team, in my view and where I'm going with this, you understand true diversity, meaning that it's not just visible, right? It's multi-layered. And I think the beauty of the World Cup is it brings that complexity of diversity to us. Because when we just kind of look at it, unfortunately, in the lens of our country, especially in our media, it gets oversimplified and, in my opinion, superficialized. That keeps us from really understanding what it means to validate and affirm people who are, quote unquote, different, right? And not just, quote unquote, racially different. And so a lot of the players have a very, very interesting backgrounds. And if you have the time, I would look into the stories of our United States players, and you'll get a real sense of what diversity means and what it should mean. That said, I'm going to close with a stat that I heard. The World Cup has received over 200 million posts on social media in some fashion or form. And this is reported out by FIFA, right? 200 million posts, right? It has had to take down over 30 million posts because they were racist. Okay? So we have to overcome this. 30 million racist posts that have had to be taken down by FIFA, despite this beautiful demonstration of the true meaning of diversity. Okay? All right? And that's what I'm going to leave you with. And also, if people feel like taking a deep dive with me, going down the rabbit hole with me, let's find out, why does ChatGPT not mention the West African countries as the least diverse? And I'm saying to you, there's a connection between that and what FIFA has had to do with taking down racist posts. Okay? And I'm going to leave you to gnaw on that and hopefully bring you down the rabbit hole with me. All right? Thank you for listening. And this is our part 1 of going down the rabbit hole with Dr. Hollie. Next month, we're going to do part 2. And I'm going to preview it for you because I have been thinking about this one for a few weeks, right? Is Zendaya black? That's what we're going to explore. I got that question and it took me down a rabbit hole. I'm going to take you with me next time, part 2. With that, we're going to say thank you to our editor. I call him the A-team. It's just me and him. We don't have anybody else. trying to make this work, doing the best we can. And to you, I want to say, continue to have a great summer. Stay safe, stay fabulous. And we want to dedicate this episode to all the World Cup soccer players and just the joy and entertainment that they're bringing to us. And I'm going to say, go Brazil. But if the U.S. keeps going, go USA. Total bandwagon, I admit it. Stay fabulous.
Outrageous Love, the podcast, is edited, produced, and includes original music by me, Andrew Hawheim, in association with Dr. Shiraki Hollie and the Center for Culturally Responsive Teaching and Learning. If you have questions about our services, curriculum, or want to know more about how to bring outrageous love and cultural responsiveness to your area, visit www.culturallyresponsive.org to learn more. And please rate, review, and subscribe to Outrageous Love, the podcast.